What's going on, people? The Attack on Titan anime is finally back, and in this video I'll be breaking down episode 17 of the final season. When the first half of the season ended last year, things left off with Zeke being blown to pieces by a thunder spear, while the Malian army began their surprise attack on Shiganshina, and today's episode begins only minutes after this. As usual, I'll be answering all the important questions like how exactly Zeke was saved, and why Eren's true motivations might not be what it seems. Before we get into it though, I'd really appreciate if you smash that sub button for more Attack on Titan videos like this, as I'll be reviewing every episode as the season goes on, not to mention I'm planning a bunch of other stuff as well. Okay, so starting things off with Zekes Resurrection, for a bit of context, the last time we saw him he was less than half a person and basically on the brink of death, but he was then approached by one of the pure titans he'd created earlier. It then proceeded to shove Zeke inside its stomach, and what essentially happened after this was that this pure titan used its own flesh to rebuild his body. That's why in the opening scene of episode 17, a fully formed but naked Zeke emerges, while the titan itself is reduced to bones after seemingly fulfilling its purpose. The way the light breaks through the clouds when he's reborn was a really nice touch, and the whole opening scene in general just had a really cinematic feel. That being said, the real mystery here is why would a titan sacrifice itself to save a human, because historically speaking this is literally the opposite of what they do. To answer this question, it's important to first remember that before Zeke was about to die, he saw a vision of a young girl, and in this episode he mentions that it was her who sculpted his body in the past dimension. The past dimension is a place that exists outside of our normal reality, and in the past we've seen that eldians can go there in particular circumstances. These paths that we see in the sky are the things that connect every single eldian to the founding titan, and in Zeke's case, since he has royal blood, his connection to the founder is more special than other eldians. For that reason, the girl chose to save him specifically because he has royal blood, and as the season continues, his connection to her will be explained in greater detail, but for now this is all we need to know. When it comes to the situation with the Yaegerists, in the previous episode, Hange was being forced to take them to Zeke's location, but after hearing the sound of a thunder spear, Flock decided to change direction so they could investigate. This is how the Yaegerists were able to find Levi and Zeke in this open field, and after being hit with a thunder spear at close range, the captain was undeniably in the worst shape of his life. Besides the fact that he was unresponsive and covered in blood, he had also lost two fingers that were still attached to the trigger of his equipment. What was interesting about this scene is just how much the Yaegerists wanted to make sure he was dead, because until this moment they assumed that the captain would try to stop them from bringing Zeke back to Shiganshina. And you know what, if he was conscious he probably would have. This is the reason why Hange tried to claim that Levi was dead so that maybe they'd leave him alone, but once Zeke emerged he had no choice but to try and escape. To put it simply, there's no way the Beast Titan would have allowed his greatest enemy, who's defeated him, 2 or 3 times now, there's no way Zeke would have allowed him to survive. So by Hange jumping into the river with the captain, it at least gives him some chance of staying alive. Now, switching over to Marley's surprise attack on Shiganshina, at the start of the episode the Malians had 2 main objectives. The first objective was for either Reiner or Porco to eat the founding titan, while Peak was meant to provide support with this special anti-titan cannon. The cannon was dropped into the district as soon as the invasion began, and in this screenshot you can see that she saw it coming from a distance, which is how Peak knew exactly where she needed to go. Unfortunately, at this time she'd been handcuffed to Gabby, so she wasn't immediately able to transform, since her titan explosion would have likely killed the warrior candidate. That's why the jaw titan had to sever off her hand so that these two could be separated, and in the process the cart titan was then able to manifest. One small piece of trivia to mention is that in the very first episode of the season, you'll remember that these anti-titan cannons were actually developed by the Middle Eastern Alliance, and Marley just stole them after winning the war, hence why it's now been modified to fit the cart titan. Anyway, General Magath's secondary objective was to rescue Gabby and Falco, and his reaction to seeing Gabby again was very emotional for a Malian, especially considering this is the same guy who sent hundreds if not thousands of eldians to their deaths. I mean, in the first episode he was literally about to sacrifice 800 of them. When it comes to Falco's location, he was still locked up in a prison cell along with the other soldiers who drank Zeke's spinal fluid, and it was now Colt's responsibility to go and find his younger brother. Just before we move on to Eren's fight with Reiner, it's worth pointing out that for the first time ever, Marley finally realized that Zeke might be a titan of royal blood, after Gabby remembered what he said on the airship. This means that on top of everything else, their new objective is also to stop Zeke from making contact with Eren. In terms of what Eren himself was thinking, early in the episode he was just surprised that Marley was able to launch a counterattack so soon, given that he had wiped out all of their top military officials. Despite that, it was thanks to Reiner's persistence that Marley went ahead with this invasion only 1 month later, and it didn't take Eren long to realize he was responsible. The Armored Titan then parachutes into the city, which was reminiscent of what he did at Fort Slava, only this time around he's also joined by hundreds of other Malian soldiers. During that fight, the anime definitely answered the question of who has the better Titan hardening, cause Reiner literally tried to break through Eren's defenses over 10 times with no success, only for Eren to then just break through his armor in one punch. I just think they need to come up with a brand new name for this shifter, cause it seems like the armor crumbles every single time he's in a real contest. In any case, with Reiner on the ground, Galliard tried to sneak up on the Attack Titan in a moment that parallels what he did in Liberia, and as he went in for the kill, we got to see Eren's Warhammer Titan abilities. His first move was to create huge spikes of Titan hardening that were literally coming out of his actual body, which is a way we've not exactly seen this power used before. Regardless of that, Galliard quickly swiped it all away because the Jaw Titan is essentially the natural enemy of the Warhammer. As the fight continued, Eren was backed into a corner where he had to use more substantial amounts of hardening to defend himself, and in fairness he was able to push back the two warriors, with Reiner looking especially messed up. The slight downside with this game plan is that the Warhammer's abilities do drain energy pretty quickly, as we saw with Lara Tiber, so it's usually a smart move not to overdo it. Anyhow, with Reiner and Galliard suspended in the air, Magath provides them with the assist by firing through the Founding Titan's brain. By doing this, Eren needs time to regenerate before his Titan can move again, giving the warriors an opening to break free. It should be pointed out that if the general wanted to, he could have actually killed him there by going for the nape, but it's always been Magath's philosophy that killing Eren would only postpone the problem, cause if Eren died, then the power of his Founding Titan would be inherited by a newborn Eldian child. This is why he's relying on one of the warriors to eat him instead, so that Marley can guarantee they'll never have to deal with this problem again. Meanwhile, focusing on the volunteers for a second, these guys were horrified at the way things were developing, but for two very different reasons. In Yelena's case, she needs Eren to survive so that Zeke's dream of euthanizing the Eldian race can still happen. As a result, she sent a ton of soldiers to protect him, but sadly they were easily being overwhelmed by the machine guns on Marley's airships, not to mention all the Malian soldiers on the rooftops. When it comes to Onyankopon now, his motivation for saving Eren has nothing to do with the euthanization plan, cause what he wanted was for the Yaeger brothers to destroy Marley as revenge for what they did to his home country. That's why in this scene he runs down to the jail cells to try and get some reinforcements, because the battle right now was definitely not looking in their favour. In this moment here, we got a nice shot of Porco maneuvering through the Warhammer Titan spikes, and if you slow this moment down, you can see the camera literally goes through the hole in his chest, which I thought was pretty cool. Following this, the Eldian soldiers continue to be massacred left and right, while the Founding Titan itself is shot in the head for a second time. Because the general kept on aiming for the brain, Eren was temporarily paralysed again, giving Reiner the chance to stab him with a shard of his own Titan hardening. In this particular scene, Magath references a moment earlier in the season, when Willy Tiber said that Marley needed another hero, and the way this scene is set up, it's implied that that hero could in fact be Reiner. This is funny considering that Reiner's early motivations back in the day was to be a hero that could save the world, and now after a lot of mistakes, he's now stumbled into a position where he can seemingly still achieve that goal. Now, moving down to the prison cells, Onyankopon wanted to release Armin, Mikasa and the other prisoners so they could lend their strength to try and save Eren. In previous seasons it would have been almost guaranteed that they'd agree to help, but Connie and Jean rightly point out that helping Eren also means helping with Zeke's euthanization plan. I explained this in my review of the first half of the season, but basically Eren agreed to help Zeke peacefully end the Eldian race by using his Founding Titan to remove their ability to reproduce. That philosophy is not something anyone in this room would really want to risk their lives for, so you can understand why they'd be skeptical in helping out. However, in this episode, Armin comes to the realization that maybe Eren doesn't actually believe in this kind of euthanization, and he's just pretending to follow Zeke and Yelena's plan. After all, way back in season 1 when we got to see inside Eren's mind, he said the reason he wanted to explore the outside and acquire freedom is because he was born into this world, so why would he then want to stop future generations from being born? It doesn't make sense that he would spend years fighting for freedom, only to then deny that same freedom to future Eldians, so Armin does make a good point that maybe Eren is just playing along. If the two brothers make contact, then it's ultimately Eren's decision how the Founding Titan will be used, meaning that he doesn't really have to follow the euthanization plan if he doesn't want to. What Armin is essentially saying here is that they need to take a chance to save Eren, and just hope that he's really on their side. On a separate note, he also theorizes that the idea of Mikasa being controlled by her Ackerman DNA is another lie that Eren made up, although in this case he doesn't provide an explanation as to why he thinks it's not true. All we know is that in the last episode it was suggested that there might be a hidden motive behind why he said these things, but for now that's all we got. Anyway, the episode ends with Eldia soldiers still getting destroyed on the surface, and I gotta say the anime has really elevated the level of graphicness and bloodiness of this conflict, cause in the manga we legit didn't see anywhere close to this number of soldiers being killed. With that said, that was my breakdown for episode 17 of Attack on Titan Season 4, and it's been many months since my last review, so I'd appreciate if you dropped a like, hit that sub button if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the episode. Until the next one, peace out.